video. And then I'm gonna I'll definitely invite you once I post on the podcast. I've actually right now got shows until June, so I'm not sure where this is gonna fall,
Sure.
but I will be posting. I usually make reels. They go on TikTok, they go, YouTube. I'll post the whole video on YouTube because people
Okay.
some people like to watch the whole thing. I make shorts. So I do a lot in terms of promotion, and I
Cool.
will be sure to give you a heads up. And yeah, okay, if you're ready, I'm going to start recording. You good? Because I
I'm
do my
ready.
audio separate.
Okay.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
All right. In three, two, one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest and a very special topic. I think you guys are going to like it. My guest today is Dr. Sam Madeira, and he holds his medical license in Washington and Montana and is board certified by the North American Board of Naturopathic Examiners. He received his doctorate in naturopathic medicine and his Bachelor of Science degree with a major in herbal sciences from Bastyr University. His other studies in college consisted of positive psychology, men's psychology, and male initiation and creative writing. Other than focusing on his clinical work, Dr. Madeira has been the blog contributor for Wish Garden Herbs Men's Health column and has also a podcast for men's hormones, health, and brain health, The Dr. Madeira Show. Dr. Sam Madeira is also the founder of Apollo Health Clinic. Now, this show is for you guys out there or for your partners who will listen for you. And today we're going to be talking about andropause and men's health from midlife and onward. And there's probably going to be a lot of is it normal or is it common Q&As, because I want to make you guys know this, that common does not mean normal. And with that, let me welcome Dr. Sam Madeira. Hi, Sam.
Hi. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm excited to chat with you today.
I am too. I am too. It's really a pleasure because I don't often do shows specific for men's health. And I think this is important. And it's interesting because I was thinking about this. I'm like, everything is all about women's health, menopause, midlife, all that kind of stuff, but not a lot about men. So I guess we can
Yeah.
begin by you telling me how you got into this whole field.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say part of it was a job. I mean, there was a job opening and a friend invited me to work at a men's health clinic. But like it said in the short bio you read about me, is that I was studying things like men's psychology and sports psychology and in that kind of positive psychology we were talking and, you know, 15, 20 years ago about flow state psychology and stuff that people may be more aware of today. So I think just in my, I guess, growing up and looking around and realizing that a lot of people were getting, parents were getting divorced at a young age for the kids. When I was growing up, it was kind of a trend, and, the stats were coming out, and I would have conversations with my grandfather. It was kind of like a very pivotal figure in my life. About things like these statistics that he was concerned about. He was born in around 1917. So I think I was just influenced by my surroundings and, growing up in the 80s and 90s. Um, Essentially that time in history influenced me. And there's people like Robert Bly, who wrote Iron John, which is a great book to read. And there are other books out there about men's psychology, male initiation type topics for boys and things like that. And I spent a lot of time playing sports and, around a lot of boys and guys growing up, like in sports as you do. and kind of realizing this trend of there's kind of like two mindsets. One was be kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, soft and share your feelings and be open with your feelings and get in touch with your feminine side, like kind of the stuff that comes out of like the 1960s new agey stuff, you know. And then there's this other side, which is we kind of see today, which is like this warrior archetype that has been, I think, like proselytized almost to a fault, but I think definitely has a place if that's who you actually are authentically, right? Like I have friends that are, active duty or been active duty military or been overseas, and that's truly part of who they were or who they are forever, right? So it's part of their story, but that's not who I am. So I need to, in that, it's when you're coming of age in the US where I grew up, it's either you go to college or you go in the military or you're a bum, kind of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like you get your driver's license, that's an initiation. You graduate from high school or get a GED, hopefully, and that's an initiation. And then you're hopefully, learn some skills or go to a trade school, college, or the military, or all the above. And what I kind of felt at that time is this is pretty hollow. There's no like soul in this. No one really cares. Graduated high school, big party, and a big letdown, you know, and then you start all over again. You go to college, you're a freshman again, no one cares. Just get in line, take a number, make a name for yourself, try to get a good job, right?
Yes.
So, what kind of happened in my studies with that and like reading books like Iron John, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was wow, men need a lot of help. And this actually started during the Industrial Revolution when you read about it in the developed worlds. So because they took men out of the home more, and then during the feminist movement, they took moms out of the home more. And whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't matter. That's what happened. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I have a lot of strong women in my life and I respect them a lot.
Yeah.
Um, However, where that leads us is young boys without parents to guide them and show them how to be in the world. And hopefully there's coaches or teachers or other so-called mentors along the way that they're willing to listen to and take heart in, because the stats for fatherless sons are really bad.
Mm-hmm.
More crime, more drug addiction, more suicide, more depression, more anxiety, less boys graduating college, high school, even going to grad school at all. And girls, young girls or high school girls are doing all those things. So when we talk about a topic of like men's health and men's hormones and men's psychology, a lot of people have been alarming for 2 decades now, arguably longer. When you read Robert Bly's book, I think that was written in the 80s. I don't know exactly when it first came out off the top of my head, but this has been in people's awareness since definitely the 60s and 70s, but I would say arguably definitely since the 90s. And scientifically, if we're going to talk about hormones and toxins and things like that, wow, so the other part of my own personal journey was around things like, healing, kind of family system type things, looking at my own health with chronic fatigue syndrome. Growing up in Vermont, there's a lot of ticks everywhere, like there is now everywhere apparently, but about 100 miles north of Lyme, Connecticut, on the Connecticut River Valley, and there's a lot of deer ticks and a lot of Lyme disease in the 80s and 90s even. So Lyme disease wasn't really as well known back then. So, I had got, Lyme co-infections from the ticks and chronic fatigue syndrome in high school. And then I started seeing a famous naturopathic physician who actually had an office in Toronto, near where you are, and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. His name was Dr. James Diadamo, and
Mm-hmm.
his son, Peter Diadamo, is also a naturopathic doctor. And James and Peter wrote a lot of books about nutrition and constitutional nutrition and blood type diets. And healthy eating and supplements and things like that. So I started seeing him in 1999, but I was already seeing like acupuncturists and massage therapists and craniosacral therapists before that. So I think really for me, this all probably started in the 90s, like mid 90s, probably 96 ish. So um, it's not, none of it is really like new or woo woo to me. Maybe it's more woo woo to some guys, but usually the window into this world for men is okay, let's talk about testosterone. And they're kind of like, okay, what else? What else can you do? I just want to feel better. What else do you
Yeah.
have? So once men have trust in a doctor like myself or some of my friends who do similar things that I do with hormones and naturopathic medicine and nutrition and kind of regenerative medicine. I used to do a lot of regenerative medicine injections for like joint stuff, orthopedic injuries. They start to trust their doctor more and say, okay, what else can you do for me? I'm going to kind of let go a little bit and give you the reins now a little bit more. But yeah, so I guess it's a longer story, but I
Yeah.
tried to keep it as short as possible. But that's kind of how I got into things. I knew I wanted to go into medicine, and I was 20 plus years ago. I was doing like wilderness EMT medicine and ski patrol stuff, and I realized that I wanted to work with people that actually wanted to work on the root cause, not just throw medications and surgeries at things, even though there's a time and a place for those things.
Yeah.
And they are part of naturopathic medicine. So
Wow. I mean, you raise just in your story, you raise a few really, really important points. And one I just want to touch on is the fact that a lot of men, when they pay attention to their health, it's seen as weak, right?
mm-hmm.
And then you say one word like testosterone, then they're like, ding, 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 ding. Okay, I'll pay attention now.
Yeah, yeah,
So I don't think a lot of guys even know what andropause is. What is it? Is
right.
it a thing?
Yeah,
Does
it's
everyone go through it? Like, what is andropause?
well, arguably not everybody goes through it necessarily, but probably if they live to 100, their testosterone is going to go down significantly after about, depending on who you talk to and what you read, somewhere between age 25 and 35, most men's hormones and women's, all of your hormones are going to drop by about 1% a year total testosterone for men and 2% free testosterone per year. So I usually say age 30-ish, unless there's like significant chronic illness or concussions or like mold illness from being
Oh,
in a water damaged building, then that can really tank, and disease could really tank your testosterone and a bunch of other things early on in your life. So there's a bunch of doctors who have like done a lot of research on this in seminars, and I've gone to a lot of those over the years and done all the webinars I could, and even done webinars for doctors, um, live in person seminars in Seattle area. But um, everybody can go through it, and it doesn't have anything to do with age. Is basically the 101
oh,
about this. So one of the
okay.
main myths is that you can be 16 and your testosterone could tank. Take a 16-year-old playing, I don't know, hockey in Canada, rugby maybe in the off season, crack their head. Okay, can you count four fingers? So and so, do you know who you are? Okay, cool. Can you feel your toes? All right, get up, get some water, take a minute, take a breather. If you feel like it, you can get back in the game. So that's how I grew up anyway. I don't know how it is now, but I have family and friends that work in youth sports for a long time, and were college athletes in the US. And what I've been told is now it's 10 days. If it's a bad concussion,
Yeah.
10-day break.
Yeah.
So, but that can cause hypopituitarism. So your pituitary gland in your brain, it sends all the signals to all your endocrine glands. So there's LH, FSH, TSH, ACTH, et cetera, right? So ADH is posterior pituitary hormone. So these signaling hormones, it's like control center up here saying, make this hormone, stop making this hormone. We have enough, we don't have enough. And there's receptors in the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, thalamus, these brain centers that control a lot of things like sleep wake cycles, circadian rhythm, hunger, satiety, all these things that people talk about today around like leptin resistance and what's that. And essentially, what has happened for us humans is we have created an environment that we were not designed for to live in and function in, and we've said just suck it up and keep going. So it's essentially like what I usually tell most men is, do you take your car for an oil change when it needs it? Like, yeah, of course. I love my car. It's like how I get around. I need it. Do you change the tires when you need to? Well, hopefully, if it's your only car, you do, right? Um, do you get a tune-up on your car engine when it needs it, like spark plugs change, or maybe you do it yourself because you're good with those kinds of things? Cool. Okay, well, why aren't you doing that for your body?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you treating your body like a garbage can in a dumpster and it's literally on fire and your wife and your kids are like, wow, look at dad go, when's he gonna when's he gonna die, you know and maybe for me and my family members, it takes me saying some pretty harsh things to get some movement, like, hey, I really don't want you dying in your sleep, you know
Who do you say
and
that to, Sam? Who do you say
well, hopefully he's not listening, but my dad recently.
Oh, oh.
But it's like basically, when if someone isn't sleeping and I don't think he has sleep apnea, but if someone has untreated sleep apnea, they can die from that. So sleep apnea is easily treatable, and if you lose weight and decrease inflammation and treat the underlying root causes, like maybe mold, maybe there's been more concussions than you ever remember because you're not going to remember your concussions. I
Okay.
don't remember all
Can
mine,
can
and
I
that
ask?
affects your brain forever.
I have to
So,
interrupt you there on the concussions thing because I actually did not know this, that concussions can affect your testosterone.
oh yeah, it's in the research
Okay.
everywhere. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
like
I know.
it's
Yeah, you
not
don't have
my
to know.
expertise, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm like, I I know somebody obviously very well. My husband, he used to play football at
yep,
Concordia, right? We talked about
hmm,
that. And
yep.
he's had numerous concussions. So I did not know and so you're telling us that really it doesn't even matter the age if you've had concussions, if you've had mold, if you have, okay, Lyme disease, any of these issues can contribute to low testosterone at any age.
Any age. So we have research, and I was revisiting these large research studies in the U.S. It's a database. It's called NHANES, all capitals. Anybody can go on PubMed. If what I noticed, let me just back up for a little bit. I know I don't want to get too granular into the technicalities of all this, but what I've noticed is that most men are very evidence based. Even if they don't understand the evidence, they want to see some proof that what is going to happen is going to help them,
Yeah.
because they're like, okay, that's going to cost money, that's going to cost time. Like, what do I have to do? Like, is there an invasive exam or treatment? What's the treatment? Can I do it? Some men seem very tough outwardly, but can never do an injection of testosterone themselves. So then it's like, okay, let's talk about cream. Will you do a cream? So when I go into research, it's not to overwhelm the listeners. It's to say, okay, there is a lot of evidence out there. If you need it, go on PubMed, start searching. You probably won't understand how to read all of it. And I don't say that to say that people aren't smart, but even doctors need to look up things in these research articles to say, okay, what is that statistical analysis terminology? And you can do that if you have the time, right? Go for it.
Yeah.
So if you're that personality, I'm just giving you a little bit of push to say, okay, if anything I say here you listen to on a podcast and you're skeptical about, go to PubMed, NIH database, US database, and you look up research enhanced testosterone and just start looking at the studies. And these are massive studies, thousands of people, 4,000 plus
Mm-hmm.
people, 4 to 10,000 people
And human.
over humans
Yeah.
in years. So,
Yeah.
from, a whole decade they'll do, and then they'll do another whole decade. And what we've seen is over a 50% reduction since the late 90s till 2016, I think, was when the last NHANES testosterone research ended last time I checked. So, and we have a lot of gaps from 2016 to early 2023. Now it's January 2020, or February 2023. Yesterday was Groundhog Day. So
Yeah.
February 3rd, 2023. So we have some gaps to fill in there. And the way that research happens is that you're not going to get the research they're doing now, obviously, until it's approved and released. And by the time it's released and you do something about it, it's kind of like, okay, well, we're always reactive in the conventional research medicine world, right?
Yes.
And the endocrinologist that you'll go see, who's a conventional endocrinologist, is better trained at this point in things like diabetes medication management than they are in most things like testosterone, from
For
what I've seen
sure.
out there. And I'm not
For
saying they
sure.
don't know a lot that I don't know. I'm not saying they're not experts. And there's a reason why they have a board cert in endocrinology and fellowships and all those things. And then a lot of them are specializing in cancers that have to do with endocrinology. So that's where they've been kind of not forced, but that's where the demand is, right? So
Yep.
cancer, diabetes. So anyway, going back, there's these large trials, essentially over 50% reduction in testosterone in 2 decades. I would say at least 60% reduction. And the average testosterone we see for like depressed males in the research is around 400 nanograms per deciliter. So you can convert that into the units for Canadian units online pretty easily. But basically, if your labs aren't in total testosterone nanograms per deciliter, but you want it essentially at least double that, ideally. So what we're seeing is a trend of all men, especially young boys from around age 12 to mid 20s in the research. And I would say even just teenage boys like 13 to 19, this huge reduction in testosterone.
Wow.
And moms are probably saying, well, why?
Yeah.
Well, there's something called a cumulative effect in toxicology. I don't even know if that's like a toxicology term, but basically in the environmental medicine community and toxicology medical community at large, is that we know that things through like breast milk, and breastfeeding is great, but through breast milk, through just you know being born at this time in utero, boys are exposed to a lot of toxins, right? So a lot of my colleagues who do like fertility or preparation for preconception preparation with natural medicines and nutrition, and essentially a lot of it is, for lack of a better word, detoxification of things like heavy metals and things like that before the female patient gets pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
so that that's not going into the baby.
Yes.
So and then if you look even at like things like risk for female cancers, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, if a female has had at least 1 or 2 children and breastfed them, they're less likely to get cancers. What causes cancers? Arguably mostly toxins, not genetics as much as we thought. So yes, genetics make people more
They got to flip the
susceptible to
switch.
toxins.
You got to flip
Yes,
that
exactly.
switch.
That's right. So we all have an Achilles heel genetically, but what we know is that our environment influences our genetics. And like
Yeah.
you're saying, it's like a light switch. So you turn it on and you turn it off. They've done like research with twin animals. They've done research with twin, longitudinal studies. Just take, if you have friends that are like twins and you look at them and like one's living a healthy life and one's not, it's like pretty obvious what's happening there. So going back to testosterone, andropause is just a name for low testosterone. The conventional name is hypogonadism. Conventionally, LabCorp, and I don't know Canadian labs. You guys are LabCorp there, right?
Well, most of
Maybe.
my over 70% of my listeners are American, so we're,
Okay. All right,
I've
Americans.
heard of
Yeah.
LabCorp and I'm in Canada, but I know they
Yeah.
have some amazing tests. And if you work with a
Yeah.
functional medicine doctor, you can get access, I think, no matter
Oh
what.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this comes from LabCorp. That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
LabCorp has the most sites in the United States out of any conventional lab testing company, for hospitals, outpatient centers, private clinic businesses like mine that are clinics that use LabCorp too.
Right.
But they had a white paper release from some research in 2017 that you can look up online, and they lowered their ranges. So I've been doing this for 10 years.
Oh.
And I was testing testosterone with LabCorp, working in a men's health clinic, seeing about 15 to 30 male patient contacts a day for a whole year. And we did thousands of blood tests, thousands of total testosterone, free testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin, PSA, CBC, thousands of them. So we compared information between the four clinics. I was at 2 out of 4 of them. I was running 2 of them, and another friend was running one, and another friend running the other one. And we would, compare notes and information. So we had this huge, basically like research database. And first of all, most men coming in there did not have a testosterone over like 450, and they should
Mhm.
have a total testosterone 900. And arguably, free testosterone is the most important number.
Yeah.
Free testosterone ideally would be at least 20, um, ideally 30. So, excuse me.
Just for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, free means available. It's available and it's actually usable to attach to a receptor to do something in the body, right? Does that make sense? Because I'm
Yep.
sure you'll explain it even better. But when you have total testosterone, unless it's usable, I mean, I guess it's good for an idea to have an idea of what is there, but how much is actually free and being used in the body is more important, right?
Exactly. So, there's a lot to this, but essentially keep it simple. And I have an online course if guys are like, hey, I don't live in Montana or Washington, and you live in Canada or anywhere, you can do an online course. And you'll learn all this. You'll learn how to interpret labs. You'll learn about like natural ways to improve your testosterone. And it's good to do so that you can understand this stuff at a deeper level. And then if you listen to this podcast and you're like, oh, I have my podcast too. But basically, yeah, so when you get a serum blood test, you want a total testosterone because that's like your whole ability to make testosterone at that time. And you want it done before 10 a.m. So it has to be processed by 10 a.m. So don't go in after 9 a.m. Make sure the blood draws in the morning. Don't work out too hard the day before. You can still walk and stretch and do stuff. Make sure you're sleeping well and stuff too. And then even if it's low, you want to go back 2 to 4 weeks later and do the same thing just to confirm it was an accurate result. Usually it will be the same. But if you get your testosterone done at like 5, right before the lab close, or at 4:30, it's going to be low because it's
Yeah.
supposed to be lower at the end of the day. So your total is your whole pie of your testosterone. That's total. Your free testosterone means free of sex hormone binding globulin. Sex hormone binding globulin is a globulin protein made by the liver. And since it's a protein, it is kind of controlled by genetics and a lot of other health factors, but it carries testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, which is the most potent androgen, and estradiol around in your blood for men and women. And there's a lot of things that can affect sex hormone binding globulin. And I've talked about it on my podcast and everything. But that's your city bus, right? So that's shuttling around those 3 hormones, and then they drop off, and then they're kind of like delivered like packages to your cells and parts of your body and your brain, hopefully, and your heart and your lungs and your muscles, sexual organs. So then your brain says, hey, we got enough testosterone, and it stops sending the LH luteinizing signal as much to the testes. So you also want to test LH if you have really low libido, prolactin. But if you go to a conventional doctor, and I always hear this over and over again, I went to my conventional doctor, they only tested total testosterone.
Yeah.
And it's almost useless.
Yeah.
Not completely, it's one data point, but your body doesn't work like a computer or like a light switch. It's not just push a button, something happens. It's more of like a symphony orchestra, a massive orchestra where if one thing's out of rhythm or tune, the other thing's going to try to correct it. And as that other thing compensates, the compensation is what we call symptoms, right? So inflammation is your body trying to heal. Low testosterone typically equates inflammation. So if you go and get like a uric acid and a total testosterone, and you get like a C-reactive protein, high sensitivity C-reactive protein test from your conventional doc, you're probably gonna have to twist their arm, but you get it
Totally.
covered by your insurance. And
Totally.
then, or if you're in a state in the US that you can self-order your tests, you could self-order these tests off of, like links that I shared in my online course or
Yeah.
other places. But it's always cheaper when you work with a doctor like me because I give you the same cost that they charge me. But anyway, for the blood test. So you're going to get these done. And if you have like high uric acid, above, 6, then not only could that be gout, that could be correlated with low testosterone. Testosterone being definitely below 500, but I would say like once you get below 450, 400, 350 is associated of nanograms per deciliter total testosterone with increase or lower of all-cause mortality, heart attack, stroke, death.
Wow.
So
That's a major
that's,
stat. Hold
yes.
up. Everyone who's listening, guys, when you're getting that test done, and if that's the only thing your doctor's testing, pay attention to that number. I love that you mentioned that. That's a really important stat. So even though, it's only one little piece of that puzzle, that's important to note. So total testosterone under 350, you said? Is that what you said, Sam?
Yeah, 350 or lower.
Associated with all cause mortality. So,
Yes, in the
yeah.
research.
Okay.
So heart attack, stroke, and there's a direct inverse connection in the research and multiple research studies between obesity and testosterone. So the older you are, the more obese, the more overweight, the less testosterone you'll have typically. The more inflamed you are, the more medical problems you have, the more surgeries you have, and the more opiates you're prescribed, the lower testosterone. Um, and
What about
statins.
statins? Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just
that's what I
gonna
was about to
say.
say. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because
yep,
almost okay,
statins
Sam,
kill testosterone.
Sam, it's crazy. But I'm 53 years old, and I
Yep.
happen to know many men who are prescribed statins at this age.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm like, okay, I'm not a doctor, but I do know that when you take away cholesterol, you're taking away the thing that's making all the hormones, people, right? Like we
Yeah.
need cholesterol. Like, what is that cholesterol? What is that LDL comprised of? Right? And nobody
Mm-hmm.
checks that. Doctors don't even check that here. They'll just say, oh, your LDL's high. Here's a statin.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's so many things. I mean, if your gut health is off, if you have gut infections or other infections, or there's genetics too. But again, genetics are about 20% of cardiovascular disease, and that's Dr. Rhonda Fitzpatrick, who's been on Joe
Yeah.
Rogan, has said that.
Yeah.
Not me. That's from the research that she's looked into. So if someone's getting in the sauna for like half an hour, twice a day, 5 days a week, and they're exercising and they're eating well, and they go and check and their LDL is high, it's like, well, how high? Is it 200 or is it like 120? If it's 120 and your total cholesterol is between 180, you need total cholesterol above 150 to make hormones. Your brain is half typically, and this is from Dr. Anthony J. He's a PhD. He was on my podcast. He wrote Ester Generation. Great book. Everyone should read it. Came out, I think, almost 6 years ago now, before Shayna Swan put her book out on similar topics about toxins causing low hormones. So I recommend the book Countdown by Shayna Swan. It's about toxins from plastics specifically affecting, like phthalates, et cetera, affecting hormones. And there's tons of research coming out literally in the last 2 years about this too.
Yeah.
So from the NHANES studies. So, when people go to the why, well, okay, you got a new car that's sprayed with chemicals inside. You don't eat organic, those are chemicals. You maybe in the field, the industry you work in, you're exposed to toxins and chemicals. In utero, you're exposed to chemicals. And by the way, the egg that became you from your mom was from your grandmother. So your grandmother was
Yes.
exposed to all these chemicals. So we
Yeah.
have, when you look at grandchildren, look at the grandmother, look at the mom, and trace back, okay, where did you live? What was your toxic exposure? What was your lifestyle like? How long did they live? How healthy were they? What was their, and generally, what was their health like? And then kind of say, okay, well, maybe that's where some of these things are coming from. I don't work in pediatrics, but I've seen a lot more younger men in recent years, and even going back 10 years, but more so now, who are 20, 25, 22, late 20s, early 30s, with lower testosterone than men who were born before 1980. So when you say like, hey, I'm in my 50s, um, your generation for men have better, potentially, if they're taking care of themselves for the most part, better hormone likelihood of not having andropause from the chemical exposure, because they don't have as many decades of exposure through generations, right? Because if they go back to their grandmother, what was their grandmother eating? Real food before we even called it
Totally.
organic,
Totally. Yep.
right? In
Yep.
my lifetime, I'm early 40s. In my lifetime, we started branding things organic. I grew up with gardens in the backyard in Vermont, New Hampshire, and it was just a garden. Nothing was sprayed.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
parents are like old hippies, so like, or at least my mom is. But there's this idea of how things are like labeled now and stuff is so foreign. If our great grandparents were all alive right now, they would kind of be baffled. Like, what do you, I buy many things, right? But, just specifically talking about food and toxin exposure, and it's not just our food. If you live on a busy street, it's the exhaust fumes every day you're breathing
Totally.
in. If you work in the military or have been in the military, it's all the toxins you're exposed to in the military. And there's foundations talking about that online all the time. So basically, when people come in and they get a test and like, in Seattle, they would say things like, well, I've climbed like K2 and Everest and all the volcanoes on the west coast of North America. What are you talking about? How do I have low testosterone? They climb Mount Rainier every year.
Mm.
And they have this kind of like bravado, and they're like, I'm big and muscular. There's no way. And well, that's what the lab test says. If you don't believe it, get it tested again 2 to 4 weeks later at the
Yeah.
same time and do the exact same thing before and see what happens. But eventually, most men will have low testosterone. And it's typically not at age 50, not anymore, if it
Before.
ever was. And there's speculation that, so the average testosterone doesn't go above 700 nanograms per deciliter today. It's anywhere from in the hundreds total testosterone to up to about 690s. And that's why the ranges keep coming down for total testosterone around the world. So I was saying, most men today don't typically have above 700 total testosterone nanograms per deciliter is the units in that serum testosterone reading. And on the advanced cardiovascular labs, the ones that I use, there's two in the US, Boston Heart Diagnostics, and I use Cleveland Heart, and that's what some other more actual like MD integrative cardiologists use too in the United States. So they're both reputable. Their ranges are potentially even lower, is what I've seen, than LabCorps.
Okay.
So because these people are more sick, right? They have cardiovascular disease. They're probably already on a statin. Maybe they already had a heart attack. And just to kind of connect that. So more sick people, there's more sick people in North America. We're in early 2023, February 2023. Now they're saying metabolically. So obesity, morbid obesity, diabetes, prediabetes, right? Inflammation. Metabolically, only about 5 to 6% of people are metabolically healthy. So 94% of people are metabolically sick. In 2018, the University of North Carolina School of Public Health said that it was 88%.
Wow.
So it went up 6% roughly in 4 years, and we know why. But basically, we had all this stuff happening, and people were locked in their homes and
Not going outside,
scared.
not doing anything, no sports, no
Yeah,
movement. I mean, we
yeah.
we had,
Fast food,
yeah, fast
DoorDash.
food.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's get
yeah.
the Uber Eats going. Can
Yeah,
I?
so that's going to increase low testosterone. So we
Yes.
don't have the research in 2023 of where your neighbor's testosterone is. And why I bring this up is I have guys who are like, well, I'm super fit. Why do I have low T? Well, you have 4 decades or 5 decades plus in utero, plus your grandmother's lifetime of your genetics getting completely like washed in toxins. And unless you were born like my parents in the 40s, and even then they, I hear stories of that generation being sprayed with DDT,
Yeah. Oh,
running
yeah.
behind the truck
Totally.
sprayed with DDT. I've had patients who broke open mercury thermometers and played with the mercury when there were mercury thermometers.
Oh, for sure.
Patients who stood on the x-ray machines at the old pharmacies when they had x-ray machines. So there's all kinds of stuff out there that we don't know what we don't know. It's
Yeah.
not to scare you, but when people are like, why do I have this? The guy climbing Mount Rainier, why does he have low T? He's sweating a lot, he's exercising, he's very fit. And I've seen bodybuilders,
Yeah.
who are in their 20s, and they've trashed their testosterone with anabolic steroids. So there's multiple causes of low T, of andropause.
But what are the
Um,
symptoms, Sam? We have to talk
yeah.
about what do these guys feel?
Yes.
Because something that you and I talked about offline is
Well,
some
their sex
men.
life sucks usually.
Well, okay, so low sex drive. Okay,
Low
number
sex
one.
drive. They may have erectile dysfunction. Erectile dysfunction does not have to be low testosterone. There's a lot of other things wrapped up in that. You have to look at the vascular system, so vasodilation.
I have to ask you about that because I have read that one thing to always check if you have erectile dysfunction, check
Mhm.
what's going on with your heart, with your, like you
Oh
said,
yeah.
your vascular
Yep.
system. Because if you can't, if you have
Can't get it
dysfunction,
up.
if you can't
Yeah.
get it up, there's something going on with your cardiovascular system because that's what gets things going. That's what pumps the blood, right?
Yes. Well, actually, so my easy kind of acronym for that is erectile dysfunction. Acronym is ED equals early death. So cardiovascular disease kills more men and women than anything else in
Yeah.
the developed world still, and in Canada and the US and most developed countries. And everywhere else, it's infectious diseases typically. And men under 40, it's things like suicide and accidents and stuff. So um, basically, if you have a history of cardiovascular disease in brother, father, uncle, especially first degree relative like father or brother, older brother, you want to definitely get that checked out.
What do
Coronary
you
calcium
do?
score,
Okay, that's
coronary
that
calcium
CAC
score.
CAC
Yep.
test,
But
right?
well, coronary calcium score is a CT
Y-
scan of your coronary arteries. But then you would go from there and get what's called a Clearly test, which is now becoming the gold standard in the last year for advanced cardiovascular testing. And only certain doctors can order it. So I work with them, and I can order that for male patients in Washington and Montana. and then you have to pass certain parameters, like you have to go on like a beta blocker and stuff. And basically they do the whole dye and the imaging, and the clearly
Mm,
part is taking that and putting it into a 3D animated technology so you can see every coronary artery and which one and how much blockage, because the coronary calcium score is only one step, but in the US that's like $100, I think, out of pocket. Another thing to get done is a DEXA scan. But going back to your question, yes, what are the symptoms? So you can go online or you do my course, it's in my course, but
okay.
go online. It's called the ADAM questionnaire, adult andropause test, basically, all capital ADAM questionnaire. And you take it, it's 10 questions. So the two key questions we've already talked about: low libido, so decreased sex drive. If you're just like, hey, I used to have sex at least twice a week. Now I don't ever think about sex unless it's like every other month or once a month. That's
Right.
still a decrease in libido for you personally as a man. And then that usually affects your relationship, right? Or relationships. So it's going to cause issues if one person has more libido than the other. So, get that worked out, because, if you're in couples counseling, you're like, hey, I don't have libido. Maybe you get your testosterone improved, and then, hey, you don't have to spend money on couples counseling. Or maybe you do both, and both are definitely helpful sometimes.
Sure.
So erectile dysfunction, low libido, decreased strength and endurance, fatigue, mood changes. So not just quote unquote depression, but anxiety or just not feeling like yourself. Guys typically don't know how to articulate or label things. They'll just say, I don't feel like myself. I'm driving down the highway, just start crying, and I'm like a macho dude. And what the hell? This sucks. Like, I don't like this. And I'm not going to take Prozac or, an SSRI because I don't want that, or I already am. And I've had depression forever, but I don't feel great still. So again, if your serum testosterone is around 400 or lower, or 450 or lower, you probably have all these symptoms. Decreased strength and endurance, decreased motivation, decreased drive for work, for your life. So you improve your testosterone, you make more money, you have more sex, you have a better relationship. I don't see why someone wouldn't want to do those things. But those are the symptoms on that questionnaire that are research-based symptoms of potential low testosterone. Then you have to get the test next. Then you would
And
say, I have low T.
and Sam, you could be I like that you mentioned this earlier because I want to stress this. You could be a guy that works out at the gym, that is muscular, and still have low testosterone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the bodybuilders that were my patients, I think their low testosterone was caused by two things. Overtraining, because their job is to be like a sculpted beast on stage, like
Yeah.
this statue looking like figure, which is fine. I mean, I have nothing against that. If that's what someone wants to do, I'll support them through it. Um, but anabolic steroids early in life will suppress androgens for the rest of your life.
Oh,
So let's
wow.
say someone is very healthy, they eat a healthy diet. They may still only have a 500 total testosterone and have symptoms of low T. And that can affect your ability to stay healthy the rest of your life, because most of the receptors for testosterone, last time I checked, for androgen receptors are in the brain and the heart. So a lot of us are like, yeah, like sex, testosterone, muscles, testosterone. People who are not having their cognitive faculties line up the way they want at work, maybe, you're trying to get a promotion in your job and you're just not able to muster the motivation and you can't work as hard. And there's a lot of ageism in a lot of corporations. So once
Totally.
you get 40 as a male, it's like you're looking behind your back thinking, the 20 somethings are coming for my job and they'll work harder, and they can because they
And
have the
cheaper
energy,
and
and
cheaper,
cheaper and
right?
cheaper. And the corporation wants that because so they can make more money, right? So um, it's really going to help most people unless there's other underlying problems, and usually there are, that have to be addressed. You can't just like take like tadalafil, Cialis, and testosterone and a multivitamin and drink a lot of protein and a lot of water and go to the gym and get in the sauna. For most people, that's not going to be enough. unless you're already super healthy. So if you're already doing all the lifestyle stuff, sleep and sleep apnea should always be ruled out by a
Okay.
sleep doctor before going on testosterone therapy. Um,
Why is that?
Not necessarily a sleep doctor, but like ask your wife, hey, do I snore? Or if you're not married, it's kind of like, okay, record yourself while you sleep on your
Yeah.
phone. And if there's apps you can use to track your sleep. And if you're sleeping horribly, you're not going to make any androgens. You make growth hormone is really big in kind of like my industry, peptides to increase growth hormone. You make growth hormone when you sleep. You can't measure growth hormone very well because it has such a quick half-life. It's gone. So you literally have to have someone like at your bedside and take a sample, a blood sample or saliva sample or a urine sample to get it. But it's those kind of early hours of waking that growth hormone potentially would be highest if you're making any at all.
Yeah.
And most men think they have low testosterone. They have low testosterone and low growth hormone because symptoms are similar to low testosterone, like lean muscle mass. It's like, hey, I can't. I used to have more muscle mass and now I'm more fat. So that can be a huge problem. So basically, um, the bodybuilding community has informed testosterone therapy, but a lot of people kind of call it like bro science. So there is actually real science around this. So hopefully the things I'm sharing, people understand is not the same as anabolic steroid hormone replacement therapy. Bioidentical hormone replacement therapies are not the same as anabolic steroids,
Okay. Okay.
and things that men are using in the gym, like selective androgen receptor modulators and things like that. Like this is not the same thing.
Because they're
And
bioidentical, right, Sam?
they're bioidentical, and anabolic steroids typically are focused specifically on the musculoskeletal system, where when you use a compounded injectable oil of testosterone or cream, or you're using another medication like enclomiphene, isoform of Clomid, to improve your testosterone levels and so-called like optimize your testosterone levels from the deficiency level it's not the same thing because bodybuilders are usually doing cycles. They'll cycle 3 or 4 months, 2 or 3 months, and then off and on,
Yeah.
because they're doing quite a laundry list, like a whole page of a bunch of different things, and
Can
it
I
could be
ask
like
you?
40 different things.
I don't want to forget this because this is really important, this point that you're talking about. On shows like Howard Stern and stuff, they'll do any of these male dominated podcasts. They'll talk about ways in which, hey guys, take this and it's going to raise your testosterone levels by this. Like, what is that? And should they really be even listening to this kind of advice?
Yeah, I mean, I have had patients listen to people who do podcasts about taking, for example, in my bio, you mentioned herbal sciences studies,
Yeah.
and we studied literally like constituents, chemical constituents in herbs and active constituents, and like how to measure them in the lab and all that stuff. And it was pre-med too. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, the fairies and the herbs, it wasn't that like that at all.
Right.
But essentially, herbal medicine has a long history in all cultures around the world, and a lot of people who are still in touch with their root heritage are aware of that, but others are not. Um, Herbal medicine is not the same as pharmaceuticals. So the way that a lot of people talk and use herbal medicine today is they're replacing the drug with the herb or the drug with a supplement, you
Right.
know, red yeast rice instead of statins. Well, red
Yeah.
yeast rice is used in ancient Chinese medicine, and Chinese herbs are a lot of them are almost like herbal drugs. That's why they work so well, and they've been ironed out for 4 to 6 thousand plus years. So those formulas work well in all cultures. You go to the Middle East, you go to Italy, you go to the Mediterranean, Spain, France. All cultures have herbs as part of their culture. It's been kind of like hammered out by the machine that I call it the machine. But that herbs don't work. So first of all, that's the background. Now let's take an herb to try to improve testosterone. Well, you're asking a lot, first of all, from one or two herbs. Third of all, I already mentioned how toxic this world is. There's all these herbicides, pesticides in the
Yeah.
groundwater. They're sprayed on fruits and vegetables and cash crops, all the seed oils that are in all of our fried food and in a lot of foods. Even if you eat organic, healthy food going out, they're probably putting seed oils on it. So you have this backdrop of toxicity. What makes you think the herbs you're getting from someone off a podcast are not toxic,
Mm.
right? um Herbs from places like China, India, Asian countries that have really no I mean, we're horrible too, but no wherewithal around things like, hey, let's not like harvest that herb because it's right next to this toxic dump, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
so um even Chinese herbs from a Chinese herbalist are should be screened and make sure that, and even then, if they are organic, they completely zap herbs coming into North America. They just like scan them with ultraviolet. They kill off all the so-called bacteria and things on them that could be contaminating us. So by the time they get into some kind of capsule or extract from another country, unless they've been handled really well in transit, there's so many things that can go wrong. You could have in the quality control, right? So the quality control is the biggest issue for everything, medications to food, alcohol, street drugs, right? So
Yeah.
um, that's the issue. Now you have someone on a podcast saying, I took this worked for me. That's an N of one anecdotal study now. It's not going to necessarily work for you. It might, but you might as well just sleep more, exercise without, over exercising or under exercise, figure out your metabolics, hip to waist circumference,
Yeah. It's huge.
work on your grip strength, figure out, okay, I gained all this weight. I'm 50, I'm 45. What the hell? I can't get rid of it. Get a DEXA scan every 2 years, go get a coronary calcium score, get your testosterone measured, and try to look at this, measure things like fasting insulin, C-reactive protein, because that person doesn't know you. Like, I don't know anyone listening to this right now. They're not my patient. So anything I'm saying is based on my clinical experience, the research I've done. But I could say something and it lands on somebody and they say, oh, I'm going to go talk to my husband about this, or we're listening together
Yeah.
as a husband and wife couple. Awesome. I hope you are. This is not necessarily for you. Podcasts are not for you. It's like going to a stadium concert and someone's singing a song and you're like, oh, they're singing that for me. Like, no, like the Who
No.
didn't sing that song
Yeah.
for you. Like the Who's singing their greatest hits at the stadium concert so they can make money and entertain you because they're the Who. But basically, or whoever you like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin or whatever generations we're talking to, who maybe hair metal or something, Ozzy
Maybe new
Osbourne.
wave. Hey.
Yeah, new wave. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm an
let's
80s
rock.
girl, 70s,
Yeah.
70s and 80s. So I like
Yeah.
all of it.
So
Uh,
basically, podcasts are just like listening to an old radio show. And what happens today is you get someone, and also, I personally don't listen to anyone who doesn't see patients. So they had to have seen patients for a long time, ideally at least 8 years, because people usually hit like a 7-year itch and then they're like, ugh, I'm gonna do something else. But they have a lot of knowledge, right? So um, if someone has never seen patients, or a PhD scientist, or they were something else and became something else, like they're not licensed to do this, or they don't have a certification to do this kind of work like you and I do, then I'm always suspicious. I'm like, okay, what's in it for you? Oh, you just had 5 minutes of ads at the beginning of the show. That's fine. You're monetizing your podcast, but now you're selling me those supplements,
yeah.
right?
No, I
So,
hear you.
and
But
it most likely won't work. Herbs do work, and there
there's
are
some, right?
herbs that work very well, but they have to be paired with the patient correctly. So ashwagandha can work
Yes.
very well.
Yeah.
However, ashwagandha is also a somewhat calming herb. It's a nervine herb. It's calming to the nervous system. So if you have a guy who's always cool as a cucumber anyway, and you give them ashwagandha, they might be like, I'm extra unmotivated,
Yeah. Too
right?
chill. Too chill.
Yeah. So you get the guy who's like wired and tired and anxious, and you're like, please stop drinking coffee. You're like a cracked out squirrel when you drink that stuff. I need you to like focus and be calm and grounded. Ashwagandha could be good for that. But even then, is it the quality? Ashwagandha is the right part of the plant, the right extraction, all that quality control stuff, right?
Yeah.
But there's other herbs too, like pine pollen from like northern New York State or Vermont or New Hampshire or
I've
like
heard
maybe
of
parts of
that.
Canada. Pine pollen can cause anxiety like you wouldn't believe in someone who doesn't know anxiety. You literally are
Wow.
counting the drops of this alcohol extract. So I don't recommend it for most people because of that. But pine pollen is used in ancient Chinese medicine. It's a very stimulating herb. And if you think about it, you're literally taking a seed of a tree, of a massive tree, the pine trees in northeastern US and in similar parts of Canada are massive, the older ones, right? And then you're ingesting it. And that's literally holds all the DNA for another tree is to get germinated, for the cone to get
Hmm.
germinated,
Hmm.
right? So it's very strong. So you need to be very careful with it. I mean, you can eat things like more healthy fats, pine nuts, walnuts, wild caught cold water fish, get enough protein and fat. All the paleo, keto diets, there's something to them. Carnivore, because they're giving more proteins and fats typically, and people are all deficient in those proteins and fats today. People are not getting enough building blocks to make hormones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, or like cholesterol, like we talked about, and your brain
Right.
is all fat. So, and that's where everything starts. But yeah, so it's a huge problem. A lot of people have low T. A lot of people think it's just like, oh, I'll take an herb or I'll inject testosterone and I'll call it good. Well, there's certain ways to do this so that you're getting the right result, and you're probably not going to hear about it on a podcast because it has to be individualized to the person. And there's other herbs too besides ashwagandha, pine pollen. There's other herbs out there that I use for people.
Okay.
Um, in formulations and things. And, there's herbs specific for, cortisol. There's herbs specific that can help in these ways. But what I've heard over the years is somebody got something like tribulus and ashwagandha, and they're taking zinc because that helps you make hormones, and they're, taking their vitamin D and eating more healthy fats and protein, and they still feel horrible.
And they
So,
exercise, and let's say they sauna and they do all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And then what do you do injections? Like, what do you do for testosterone?
Well, yeah, if
Is
they're
that when you would
testosterone,
add it in?
well, usually I like to wait a while if they're young, like 3 months, undo as many natural things and detoxifications and things in their 20s and early 30s.
Yeah.
But it's a case by case thing, right? So if I get a patient with like 20 concussions, or who played hockey or football or soccer or lacrosse, and they're like, yeah, I've been knocked unconscious and in the hospital from a concussion. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, you're probably not making any T, and you have, your LH signal super low and your T is really low. Let's see what we can do about this for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then consider testosterone injections or a compounded daily cream.
And
So
is that something that a guy would cycle? I mean, I know women who take testosterone as well, but today we're just for the
yeah,
topic's
they
sake, we're
don't
talking
go
about
off of it.
guys. They
No,
don't go off of it, and there's no
no.
cycling. They just kind of stay on it and then measure every once in a blue moon to see how levels are.
Well, I typically measure every for the first year, every so we do an initial test treatment for about 6 to 8 weeks, retest, and then after that, if they're doing well and the dose has been corrected and they're doing well in that dose, then we go out 3 months and until about
Okay.
9 or 12 months. So through about the first year, and then if there's doing well and they don't have a lot of comorbidities. They're not like a high risk patient, so to speak. They don't have they're not seeing specialists. They don't really need to check in with an MD, medical doctors. Then we push out to about every 4 months for the second year. And then I usually say that's kind of how I keep it. It's like 3 times a year. Let's at least check the bare minimum labs in the blood.
Okay.
Um, I'm not a big fan of someone donating blood a lot on testosterone injections. There are real contraindications. They're on my website, on the blog, liver disease, kidney disease, cancers,
Sorry,
prostate cancer.
can you repeat
For
that?
just Yeah, so for testosterone therapy, there are real contraindications besides untreated sleep apnea, such as bipolar disorder, type 1 and type 2, cancers that are like in process of being treated and not in true remission, and you haven't been approved by your oncologist to do androgen therapy, testosterone therapy. So
Okay.
if someone had prostate cancer, you usually can't do testosterone therapy after that. You're not going to probably get approved for that unless you sign a waiver and are checking PSA and prostate stuff frequently,
Right.
even though improve your quality of life. And I'm all for that part. But liver disease, kidney disease, if someone is in general not a healthy person, they're morbidly obese and they need like a surgery and their surgeon won't do the surgery until they get liposuction or something, that person should not do testosterone therapy. If they can't pass like a basic fitness test, like walking 2 miles without being out of breath, or they're have shortness of breath at rest sitting, then they really need to get the proper evaluations from other doctors first. This is not for people that, this may sound crude, but if you can't have sex without being out of breath, and you can't run or walk a mile without being really out of breath or fall over, then you probably shouldn't be doing testosterone therapy.
And I guess really we're just past an hour. We'll have to summarize. The key is do all the other stuff first, right? Like before going and taking
Yeah.
testosterone or asking your doctor for testosterone. Like all the things that we talked about, like do you have heavy metals? Do you exercise? What's going on with your body composition? All these different things. And then if you're still like, say there's some people who have had multiple concussions and they are healthy other than that, other than their history.
Right.
So
Yeah.
maybe, and I should say also, we're not giving medical advice here. This is just a discussion and education so that you can go and have this discussion with your own practitioner about this. So, and there are contraindications that you mentioned as well. We talked about supplements, we talked about lifestyle. I'm trying to think if there's anything we missed here.
Yeah, and I would say exercise, sleep, and nutrition,
Yeah.
and like clean water, clean air, clean food. You can go environmentalworkinggroup.org, look at the Dirty Dozen, Clean 15, put in your zip code for your water quality, get a good water filter that's, not going to introduce you to mold, and other toxins that's in our water that are bad for our hormones and our overall health altogether, and all of our endocrine glands, right? So fluoride's not good for your thyroid. Chlorine's not good for your thyroid. That's in your water, most likely, if you're drinking city water. Even well waters have issues. So the
Yes.
point being here, folks, is yes, if you do the foundational things and you feel great, you probably don't need to see someone like me. If you do the foundational things and you need help doing the foundational things, that's why I have my podcast and my online course on my website. And I'm not here to like sell anyone on anything, but if you're kind of like, hey, I need more guidance, this podcast is a good starting place. And then you can go to my podcast, and then the online course if you're like, hey, I want to pay a little bit of money and try to do all this on my own. And it is all natural interventions. So there
Yeah.
is no, I can't prescribe through a course, right? So, and I would say with any medication, any MD, if you had longer visits with them, would say your lifestyle is a big part of this. They say that all the time. I used to work in an ER, and a guy came in with an acute MI. He was in his mid 30s. He had had a heart attack 3 to 4 days ago, and he had to be airlifted out of this small hospital in northern New Hampshire. And we were nearly Canada, in northern New Hampshire. And he was eating pizza and drinking beer, and he looked fit. I mean, he looked lean. He didn't look obese. This is 22 years ago. And he was airlifted, and the nurse said to him, "Honey, what have you been eating?" "Oh, I've been eating pizza. I drink beer, like chips." "Well, you're going to have to change that if you want to live a long
Mm,
life." 36.
wow.
So that's obviously not everybody, but the first sign of heart disease is heart attack, myocardial infarction, and your lifestyle is causing that. And if that's an issue for you, or other similar things are an issue, diabetes, weight gain, um, etc., or even just concussions, right? Then you're going to have other potential issues if you don't address that, like concussion, dementia, right? So, there's a book called Hemingway's Brain. It's about all of his concussions, and that's why he's an alcoholic and blew his brains out. So that's what we know that now. It's called CTE, right? So go watch the movie Concussion if you still like Will Smith, and check it out. But basically, um, if you're not doing the lifestyle, you don't have any foundation to build anything on. And frankly, you shouldn't be relying on statins to do what your diet should be doing for you, and your exercise and your sleep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I'll end on that if we need to talk about anything else. But I think it's like we both agree that if you're not living a healthy lifestyle, and everybody agrees about that in medicine, just the machine of hospitals and conventional medical care, they don't have time to tell you, like, hey, like, stop eating fast food. Like, look at what hospitals feed people. So it's really, a lot of this is kind of like hard because or frustrating, I think, because the weight is on our shoulders as the individuals, because the food companies don't care,
Nope.
the medical machine doesn't care. They're all profit generating neo-capitalism giants, and that's just the way it is. That's the way it has always been.
Yeah.
So we can't be a victim. We need to take charge of our own lives and control the controllables you can. And maybe you take 3 supplements, and you work out more, you figure out what's going on with your heart and your brain, and you can avoid being a statistic, because that's where everyone else is headed,
Yeah.
right? So sadly, and
Yeah.
it does work. Like this, I had a guy messaging me on Instagram, and he was like, "Does it work?" about my online course. And I'm like, I was kind of confused. "What do you mean, does what work? Does your course work?" "Well, yeah, that's why I like spent hours putting this together." uh Natural medicine, lifestyle medicine works. And I think a lot of men who are kind of like new to it, they're kind of left the matrix of the medical machine, and they're kind of like, is this going to work? Well, your statin's not working.
Yeah.
So your
Yeah.
statin's just suppressing symptoms. And in the research, statin medications work way better for men after they've had, and women after they've had a heart attack, than before. So you're really not preventing anything. You're just, it's like duct taping your car back together and saying, like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And everybody in your community and your family is like, are you crazy? Your car is literally duct taped together. You're like, why don't you spray it with WD-40 while you're at it? Because that's how
Yeah.
I grew up. If you can't fix it with duct tape and WD-40, it's not a big deal, or it's a big deal now. So, but I think men need to realize that to be an asset for their families, for their wives, for their kids, for their grandkids, in their communities, they have to be strong and healthy. And if they're not strong and healthy now, frankly, without getting like emotional, or like, no, and there's no blame behind this, but frankly, you're a liability, because now everybody's just worried about you all the time. And if you've already been in the hospital, or you've already had a heart attack, they're waiting for the next one, because most likely most men are never going to get optimized. They're never going to get as healthy as they could be, because frankly, they don't think it'll work, or they don't trust the doctor, or they're scared of a scary diagnosis. And these are from like research-based questionnaires, right? So once they can get past that, and they can say, okay, this isn't scary, I can trust this person, I'm willing to take a risk here, This is not the same thing as meeting with a conventional doctor, or this doctor was a conventional doctor and they're now doing this type of work and they understand both worlds. Awesome. Take a risk, because what do you have to lose? I mean, the other option is you're the 94, 95% that are going to die of a heart attack, stroke, cancer, um, neurodegenerative diseases. And it's not to say you still won't die of those things. We all die of something, right? But statistically, the reason why people are dying from those things are toxins, not detoxing correctly. Metabolic syndrome can lead to cancer. So, and there's no blame in any of this. This is all just so you can take it and take action, right? Not so you can be in a deer of the headlights and be like, oh, this sucks. There's a solution, there's solutions. However, the longer we wait in any type of medicine to do anything, the worse things usually get, because the body is trying to fix itself. And in the way the body's trying to fix itself when you're really sick, it can't fix itself anymore. So that's why people end up on dialysis, because their kidneys stop working and they can't get a kidney transplant. So it's, if you need to add it up, go look up how much a brain transplant costs. I can't find it online. That's a bad joke. But kidney transplants are also very expensive, and the only place that does them free is a province in India. And I think you have to be like a native Indian resident of that province to go to that hospital and get a free kidney transplant. And then even then you have to qualify. So, and organ transplants are serious things. So,
So,
if we treat ourselves better than our cars, then maybe we'll be as healthy as our parents were if they were healthy.
yeah, I like that because the fact is that it's so much easier to do the work before you get a serious diagnosis. Then you got to backtrack. And in some cases, you can't backtrack, right? So that's exactly what you're saying. So, where can we find you, Sam? Where can we find? I love that you have these courses on your website. Like, where can someone find you?
Yeah, so my website is apollohealthclinic.com. Apollo spelled APOLLO healthclinic.com. And you can contact the clinic there if you're interested. But there's a lot of free blogs, and the podcast lives on the website, or all audio podcast platforms: iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, etc. And not on YouTube yet. And then my online course is on my website as well. You can just go to the courses and click there, and then you'll be able to sign up for it and pay for it and do the course at your own pace. And I also have a free men's only Facebook group if people are on Facebook still. It's called Live Strong, and there's almost 600 men from all over the world, all walks of life, in that group. And I post research, podcasts, other people's podcasts, all kinds of stuff in there. So, and there's a lot of videos and Facebook Lives and things. So, there's free resources, blogs, Facebook group, podcasts. And then there's a free Andropause, reversing Andropause document that you can
Awesome.
sign up for. Yeah, it's on the
Great.
website. So
That's
you
so
can
great.
download that. Yep.
And then I
Yeah.
will have all that information in the show notes as well. And Dr. Madeira is also pretty active on Instagram, and you
Yes.
can go and follow him there. And I'll have all the information. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And I love this topic. We might have to do a continuation, a part two.
Yeah, it can go pretty deep. So thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I pressed stop on the audio. That was really good.